Welcome to the Awakening Women podcast. I'm your host, Leanne Oaten, and former therapist with a background in counseling psychology. This podcast is for strong, high-achieving women who want more in their lives and relationships, who are ready to rise to the next level of growth, healing, and evolution. Nothing changes until you change. And when you change, everything else changes around you as a result. If you're done with feeling powerless within the chaotic and toxic dynamics in your relationship and don't even know where to begin with making changes, I've got you covered. I know you've tried everything, including counseling, watching hours of videos, and reading stacks of books on narcissism, and find that all it does is leave you feeling even more stuck and in the same place. None of these things work when you're living with a narcissistic spouse because the root causes of the symptoms are not being addressed. As with physical health, there is an emotional, physical, spiritual, and psychological component to healing and overcoming the problematic symptoms and pain you're facing every day in your life and relationship. If you're ready for a direct, no fluff, no nonsense approach to take you into your personal power and take back your life, you are in the right place. Let's get started with today's episode. Welcome to this edition of the Awakening Women podcast. Today we're talking about stories and how the stories that we tell ourselves shape our reality and create our life and how that all comes to be. We're going to chat about that in just a moment, but before we do, I want to let you know that on Monday, this is just a few days away, I am hosting a free 3-day boot camp called Own Your Power. I've run this before many times. It's been in the vault for quite a while. I'm bringing it back and we're going to be going through this together over 3 days. You're going to get a video lesson sent to your inbox each day of the challenge, so the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I will be live each day in our Facebook group to answer any of your questions. So this is something I have not done in quite some time. So, with the live aspect and being in the group and doing the lives and all of that. So this is your last opportunity to get in on this before the end of the year. I don't know when I'll run another one live like this. So if you are feeling really on the fence and indecisive about what to do about your relationship, and you want to get some clarity, you want 2024 to be the year that you finally figure this out, then you want to make sure you get in the boot camp. The link is in the show notes of this episode if you'd like to save your spot. All right, so stories. We're going to be chatting about this actually during this boot camp because this is such a big thing, is basically everything that we are telling ourselves on repeat is a story, and it's a story about the other person, ourselves, the world, other people, the way life works, what we can and can't do, whether we're trapped or we're not trapped, whether we're always going to be in this place or we're not going to always be in this place. It's everything that we tell ourselves on repeat is a story, and we can change it. So there was someone in our free group, this is where it stood out to me, in our Facebook group, who said something to the tune of, I have ADHD and so I forget things and I don't know when it's gaslighting or when it's not. That's a story, right? A story is like, I have ADHD, so I get confused, so I don't know what's real, what's not. You have to pull yourself out of that story and rewrite it to something different that is more in line with, I trust my reality. I trust myself. I trust what I see, hear, and feel. I trust what I heard. I trust my perceptions of things, right? And in the case where I am wrong, in the odd time I am wrong, I can admit to it in that time. But I'm not going to go into the default and just think that it's my memory problems that are the issue, right? That's a story. And we have to look at if our stories are leading us to growth and expansion or change, or if our stories are what is actually keeping us stuck. So a big part of being in one of these types of relationships is feeling trapped, feeling like there's no way out for this reason, that reason, and the list of reasons. And on the outside looking in, sure, that could seem like, yeah, that's pretty insurmountable. I could see why that would feel impossible to just walk away from that. But that is still a story that you're telling yourself that's keeping you trapped. So one thing that I really like to practice when I'm feeling triggered or I'm feeling upset or there's a pattern that's going on, I like to define myself, what's going on within myself with the story I'm telling about myself with this is. So it's a story I'm telling myself about what this person did or what this person said or this particular problem in my life. This thing that's not going well. What is the story I'm telling myself? Right? So when things are going good and things are better, there's a story behind that I've been telling myself that is in line with what I want. So when it comes to things like changing your health, instead of believing the story that you're always going to feel this way, you're going to get burned out again, you're going to get sick again, and on it goes. It's having the story of my body is miraculous. My body can heal. Like our body regenerates itself. It can heal, right? But if we have the same stories about not healing, then we won't heal. So what I've seen with this, and I almost got myself wrapped up in it too with some health stuff. I'm going to actually be talking about this in a future episode, which is estrogen dominance, which is something I've been recently diagnosed with. And so I was in some Facebook groups around this just to try and get some information, like the natural health kind of aspect. And I was in a couple of other ones just to get some ideas, because I'm already doing a ton of research and tons of, naturopathic care and holistic medicine and natural medicine. Like I'm doing everything naturally to balance this out. But what I quickly noticed is being in those groups dragged me down. I started thinking in the negative ways these women were posting, like, oh, it's horrible, this is what's happening, oh my God, like this is happening, this horrible thing. And I realized, I cannot be in this because that is not in line with me realizing that my physical symptoms are just a manifestation of the emotional. And I truly believe that. And again, that's a story. It is a story. My story is that my emotional state affects my physical state. Therefore, I'm responsible for managing my emotions, my stress, my self-care, how I take care of myself, investing in the proper support that I need. It is making tweaks to my lifestyle. It's taking particular supplements on a specific regime. It's taking bioidentical hormones. So it's all of those things. It's holistic. So I do other things for reprogramming my brain and resetting myself. So, but again, this is a story. Like some women have the story that they can't heal themselves, or that the only way they're going to heal themselves is through surgery or having their organs removed or some other way. Whereas for me, I chose, especially once I started to see the effects women were having from different medical interventions for this issue and the things that can happen as a result of estrogen dominance, I was like, that is not going to be my story. And so I had to remove myself from those groups, because it is very much about what you surround yourself with for everything. So this also can be the case when you're in these other Facebook groups of women just posting all kinds of different horrific stories. Now, in our private Facebook group, the ladies in there are quite good. Like there's not really any emotional dumping that goes on in that group. We're just posting ghost kind of stuff, like posting trauma stories and then not coming in to interact when other women have come in to share. Like I don't tolerate that. If you do that, I will just delete you from the group, because I feel like that's not a good spirit to come into a space with. And even though it's virtual space, I still want to keep it as high vibe as I can, given the topics that we talk about in there. So back to what we're talking about here is stories. So I want you to think about where you are right now and what are the stories that you are telling yourself that are having an impact on your inability to get out of these patterns in your life. This doesn't just pertain to relationships, but because this is where we start here, is with relationships. And then where we really start from that is with ourselves, right? Because that's the only thing we can change, the only thing we can influence. And so you can start to change your stories. But if your story keeps spinning the lack, the how you're not going to be able to do it on your own, or that you're trapped, or that you're going to be ruined if you leave, or that your kids will be ruined, go and just write them all out. Like, what are all the stories? And then realize, and you can question it and be like, is this true? Like, is this actually true? Now, sometimes it can be hard to identify the stories and it can be hard to shift them. But just to get you to start thinking about it right now, just for some food for thought, is to realize that this is what we're talking about when we're saying let's do the inner work on ourselves first. Because your stories are what's keeping you trapped. If you feel trapped, you're telling stories of being trapped to yourself. And maybe you're listening to others' stories of how you should make it work for the kids. Don't break up your family. Splitting up is going to be hard. It's going to be hard on them. It's going to be hard on you. You're listening to other people's stories, and then you take those on as your own. You're also listening to your spouse's stories, and you're taking on their reality. You have to clear away all of that and stop doing that. And this is where you really just strip everything down to where you have to get in touch with you and your needs and your desires and what thought patterns are keeping you stuck in the same cycle, because that's the only thing you have control over. My apologies if you could hear humming in the background. I had my little space heater on for that whole part of the recording. You probably heard it in the background, but I am not starting over. So I turned it off, and here I am again. This is real life. My office is downstairs on the main floor, so it gets a little chilly, and I forgot to turn it off before I hit record. So hopefully it wasn't too bad with the noise in the background. So back to the topic. So here's what you can take away from this is wherever you are finding yourself right now, whether it's things you want or don't want, they are a result of the story you're telling yourself. So if you have some things in your life that are going well, likely you have a story around that is lined up with that. The things that are not going well, and I see this all the time, by the way, I've been doing this work. I've been doing client work for 12 years as a therapist, and then now as a coach. But just in the last 7 years with awakening women and women in these relationships specifically. So I've been in the trenches with these women, learning from them, learning what they're struggling with, seeing where they get stuck. So it's been so rewarding, but also I learn so much from the women I work with to see, okay, this is where they get trapped. This is where they get stuck. And it is with stories. It's the shit they have going on in their head that they're telling themselves that keeps them trapped. And as soon as we start challenging that, shifting that, changing that, really kind of dissecting it in a sense, and they're able to identify the thinking patterns that are keeping them in the same reality, things start to shift and move really quickly. Because when we are in it, it's very hard to see our way out. And you very well might be in a situation in your relationship that is very difficult to leave. So I am not discounting that whatsoever. And when you come into my program and the cycle, it is not for me to tell you to leave. And I am certainly not trying to give you a way to stay. What I recognize, and I have recognized through working with so many women in these relationships, is that typically they are still in a place of limbo. They know in their gut, this is not working, but they're just not in a place to really execute and make those steps toward leaving. They've tried so many times and they keep going back. And so my goal is to help you grow from the inside out so that, even if you end up staying in the meantime, you're not settling into the same patterns as before. And you do have the goal that if the behaviors continue and it's getting worse, that you need to get out, right? This isn't a conversation about here's how you can make an abusive relationship work, because the truth is you can't. Does that mean that you need to leave right away? No, you have some time, likely, depending on your situation. It's, it's personal for every woman, but I just recognize that not every woman is in a place to just be yeah, I'm walking away next week. I've had it. It's a process, and there are different factors that happen. And I've seen this with countless women before where so again, it's a story of they want to keep the house that they're in. They maybe raise their kids there. The kids are used to the home. They want to keep the home and have the spouse move out and get a secondary place. And there are some that refuse to do that as a way to control, just to make it more difficult for you, maybe to get you to change your mind and back down. And I've seen that time and time again over the years. That can make it really hard. So, there's some things you can do in that if that's truly the outcome that you want, but it is also important to kind of look at all sides, like if that's the best solution. But in the end, there's some things you can do within that so that you're not thinking, I'm trapped, he won't leave, right? He won't get out. If that's the case, then you do have some tougher decisions to make. Of course, it just depends on how badly you want out and to free yourself. So the story is what's keeping you trapped. So go ahead and take some time today to jot out some ideas. Come into our Facebook group if you're not already in it and share. Let me know. I want to know what came up for you from this. If anything stood out for you that you can identify as a story you're telling yourself about the situation. And this is part of what we do inside of my program. We're going to be talking about it more in the boot camp. So if you want to dive in deeper with me, make sure you sign up for that series. Again, we kick off on Monday. I'll place the link in the show notes of this episode. All right, I hope this has given you something to think about, and I will chat with you in the next episode. Take care. Thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of the Awakening Women podcast. If you love this episode, please take a moment to share it and leave a 5-star rating and review. If you're ready to take your next step, head to the link in the show notes to sign up for my latest free class. Also, be sure to follow me over on Instagram at Awakening Women Official and join the conversation. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again in the next episode. Take care of yourself in the meantime, and I'll see you online.